Today, we have a couple things that we want to talk about, topics, current events and stuff, which really kind of affects everyone that's in this ecosystem. And we just want to kind of get some of your thoughts on it. One of the first things which, all of us have kind of been following very closely is the language change in Hex, obviously going from staking to mining. And, I think it makes a little bit of sense for sure. But what are your thoughts on that? How do you think that really matches up to what Hex does and how it works? Is there a better name that maybe you would use?
That's a good question. So I actually did a video on this today.
Oh, did you? Awesome.
Yeah, I did, because I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I think, at least within this specific thing, marketing wise, it's a good idea to change it to mining, just because I feel like mining is a word that's actually probably known more than staking, at least if you're looking at someone who is just getting into crypto, right? They've potentially heard about like mining Bitcoin or whatever it is. And so from a marketing entry level perspective, I think it's smart that this has changed. But I do like the sentence of how Richard does say the focus is on the user doing all of their own work and reaping all of their own rewards. So I think it's focusing on that there is no middleman, and that it doesn't go into it here, but that the hex code is immutable. It doesn't have admin keys. And so it really truly is just the person that's running the code and their coins that they're putting into it. So I definitely think it's an interesting choice. I never would have thought of that myself, to be honest with you, but I think it's interesting, and that it definitely could propel the Hex community and just Hex in general. But I'd love to know all of your thoughts.
So I've seen a lot of names getting tossed around. Publisher was one that I saw not too long ago. And, I don't understand, honestly, changing it. Like, you've kind of already put all this effort into creating content, websites, other things. There's tons of other, materials that people have shared around staking, and to kind of change it 3 years, 2.5 years into the game. I'm not really understanding why it's necessary, but it's not. I'm not the founder, and he has every right to do what he thinks is best for the community. And so I'm just going to kind of leave this with a question mark. I don't know. I don't know the answer to what it should be called. I think staking would have been just fine. What do you guys think?
Well, I think as far as go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's obviously just a narrative switch. Nothing's really changing, but Hex was originally called Bitcoin Hex. That's what the original name was. Richard has always maintained that Hex is Bitcoin with a proof of work change instead of just buying and selling Bitcoin. You can stake Hex, which Bitcoin doesn't have. So in the early days, he kind of went with that narrative, and obviously it sort of changed. And when Hex actually launched, he dropped the Bitcoin moniker. But I don't know, like, for me, it's more interesting why he's doing this now rather than the fact that it's being done. I mean, there's obviously a lot of speculation about that. But at the end of the day, nothing's actually changing. It's just how people speak and the terminology they use.
Right, true.
Well, that's an interesting point that you bring up there with, like, nothing has changed. Like, well, all the websites can say mining, but the code is still going to say staking as far as Hex. And that's just a statement of fact. It's not a confrontational statement anyway. It just is what it is. And Fashion Coder, I like what you said with regards to like how simple and easy it is to understand and what it does for onboarding. When I read the white paper for Pulse Bitcoin, as a Hexican myself, and I was just looking to diversify my assets and stuff, I was reading through the white paper and just how easy it was to, like, oh, mining? Okay, cool. That's so easy. I use my ASIC, I plug it into the code, and then out comes Pulse Bitcoin. Very easy to understand. And one of the perspective things that we look at for our community is what ASIC could be used for in the future. A lot of speculation out there for a potential Pulse Litecoin, or a community member who's making their own token and things like that, where it's like when you stake Hex or mine Hex now, I guess, it makes more Hex. Right now, when you mine with ASIC, it makes Pulse Bitcoin. But as we go along, we're looking at ASIC being so much more than that. The token generation and speculative aspect of what it could be used for is what I really find appealing.